Steve and I my brother is 91 years clean jack. Until he gets a stroke.
You knew what you were doing.
She came yesterday. She's usually got so many things to do. Am I allowed to say hello?
1 minute early, but good morning. Welcome to Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Please remain seated for now as our illustrious choir, led by Alina Hemingway, sings our call to worship. Where do we come from? This is hymn number 1003 in the Teal hymnal. Once again, welcome to the Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. We are so glad to be together in this loving, vibrant community. Is the sound too loud today, or is it okay? Okay, it seems like I'm being well amplified. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, for this hour we are one gathered congregation, and all are welcome. My name is Mac Johnson, and in the spirit of our KUUF mission, and as we strive to be more inclusive, I offer you this self-description. I have steadily whitening hair, from gray to white, wear glasses, and I'm wearing a blue and white striped shirt and dark jeans. Today I'm also wearing a puffy because the furnace is out. And I'm adorned with my KUF ball cap, the only cap I own that doesn't have chalk marks and sweat stains all over it. It's my formal cap. My wife Lisa and I raised our son Isaac here at KUUF, starting over 30 years ago, and we keep returning for the spirituality, the fellowship, and the opportunities for action. Today, our worship leader this morning is the Reverend Kari Kopnick. Kopnick? Yes. Who serves as the community minister for the Chaplaincy Institute, an Interfaith Seminary and Community, where she acts as campus chaplain, leader of the ordaining body, and pinch-hitting communications manager. She also loves to garden, write, and tend her backyard charm of very bossy hummingbirds. Yeah, I know the type. If you are visiting this morning, welcome, welcome. If you are here in person, we look forward to seeing you after the service during our coffee hour. If you're attending online, please introduce yourself in the chat. Either way, we're very glad you're here. I invite you to follow along in the order of service. For those of you attending virtually, all the links for this service, including the order of service, are on our website and in this morning's worship service email. If you're here in the sanctuary this morning, please silence all of your electronic devices. Thanks for the reminder. Great. The announcements are available on our website, www.kuuf.org, or in our weekly email newsletter, The Candle. But first, I welcome our friend Ellen Newberg to the pulpit. Ellen has an important announcement regarding the brochure found with the order of service this morning.
Good morning. I'm 2 inches shorter than I used to be. I'm now 5'6". I used to be 5'8". I have very white hair. I celebrated my 82nd birthday yesterday. And I have a purple theme going from that poem. You know, when I'm an old lady, I will wear purple. My name is Ellen Newberg, and I have a story to tell you about what inspired my husband Alan and me to write our wills. We were flying back to SEA from New York City when our pilot made an announcement shortly after the takeoff. It seemed that our plane had experienced a bird strike and had lost cabin pressure in the cockpit. No need for alarm. But we would be returning to the departure gate to change planes. Okay. A very short time later, he announced that we had way too much fuel to even consider landing. So it occurred to me, shouldn't the pilot kind of known that from the get-go? Who's making these announcements anyway? And so then they continued. We just fly around until we burned enough fuel off so we could safely land. Then a very, very long time later, in the most reassuring tones possible, he said, not to be concerned about the foam on the runway. But the firefighting equipment on the tarmac, everything was fine. All those preparations had been made only out of the greatest abundance of caution. Everything was fine, nothing to worry about. Wow. That experience was the motivation we needed to find we were probably in our 40s at that time, the motivation we needed to find an attorney whose specialty was estate planning and wills. He introduced us to the concept of legacy giving, and as a result, we have designated several of the organizations we most love and respect as beneficiaries in our wills. You won't be too surprised to learn that KUUF is one of them. So, what is the point of all this? Well, if you're among the estimated 70% of Americans without a will, although I'll bet it's higher in this congregation, or you need to update the one you wrote how many years ago? The Ways and Means Committee has exciting news for you. At the board's direction to raise awareness of legacy giving at KUUF, we are partnering with the Kitsap Community Foundation to provide an estate planning 101 session on Thursday, October 19th from 10 o'clock till 11:30, right here in our own sanctuary. It's free of charge. It's presented by an estate planning professional, and there will be cookies and fruit. Watch for publicity about it in the Candle and an email blast. Now, it's very important to register because the Kitsap Community Foundation has sent an invitation to the Kitsap Great Give list, which is like thousands and thousands of people. The attendance is capped at 100, so we want to make sure your name is on the list. We hope to see you there. That was Thursday, October 19th, 10 o'clock, here in our sanctuary. Thank you. 10 o'clock in the morning till 11:30. And I will grab your script.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you very much, Ellen. And now I'm proud to do our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the Aboriginal territory of the Suquamish people. Expert fishermen, canoe builders, and basket weavers, the Suquamish live in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's Central Salish Sea as they have for thousands of years. Here, the Suquamish live and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. And these are our opening words for today by the Reverend Karen G. Johnston. Let us be a people of not forgetting. As we gather this morning, let us be a people of not forgetting. Let us practice holding collective memories that might otherwise slip into that enormous void that sucks at and corrodes any future we hold dear. Let us practice honoring truth-telling up from the past that must come fully into the now, lest we falter and fail, lest the whole remain in pieces. Let not our need for comfort or simplicity, for easy forgiveness or false pardon, smother the heartbreak that still needs healing. Let us practice resilience with reckoning. Let us marry memory and promise. Let us dance in the tension we find there. Let us rest in the integrity we cultivate there. Let us be partners with the possibility that emerges there. It is good we gather. And now we have some special guests for our chalice lighting. We welcome Harper and Addison up to light our chalice. The daughters of Megan Shepherd, who is right at this very moment child carrying up in the Matten building. She is a stay-at-home mom who loves gardening and baking anything bread-related. Fun and creative 10-year-old Addison, I think that's the tall one, loves making her own jewelry and wants to be a fashion designer someday, while sweet, inventive, and animal-loving 6-year-old Harper, on your right there, someday wants to own her own zoo. I will attend. Both have completed the 100-hour library reading challenge at Kitsap Regional Library. Kudos, girls. Congratulations. Now you may join me in lighting our chalice. If you have your own chalice or candle at home, please light it as I read our chalice lighting words. Nice. Invoking the past, present, and future. Come, let us enter this space of hope and community. Come, let us enter this space with our sorrows, our joys, our passion, and compassion. Come, let us enter this space with the stories of our ancestors, for their strength and wisdom beats in our hearts. Come into this space, present to the beloved companions who move beside us. Come into this space, mindful that together we are building a future for other generations. Come into this space and let us worship. And now I'd like you to join me in the spoken affirmation. The words will appear on the screen, which I can't see. We gather as a caring community, seeking life's deeper meanings. We value diversity and affirm the worth of all living things. We strive to speak truth in love, to act for justice, to grow in spirit, and to care for the earth. We celebrate with open hearts and minds the creative power that sustains and transforms us. In our next hymn, We Are says, in the words of its composer, Dr. Isaiah Barnwell, each and every one of us stands atop a lineage that has had at its core mothers and fathers and teachers and dreamers and shamans and healers and builders and warriors and thinkers and so, in spite of our uniqueness, we come from and share every experience that humankind has ever had. In this way, we are one. Please rise in body and or in spirit to join in singing hymn number 1051 in the Singing the Journey, the Teal hymnal. We are. Beautiful. The whole room's a choir. With our Director of Children's Religious Exploration off today, No Melinda Hughes, another excellent reader and longtime member, recently retired, I'd like to point out over and over again. Liz Roberts will share our time for all ages in Melinda's stead. Thank you.
And Melinda's not just off, she's ill, as many teachers are at the beginning of the year, but not this retired teacher. Okay. Our children this month are talking about the gifts of heritage, and today specifically is the gift of staying close to our roots. And I'm going to share with you a wonderful book called Be a Tree, written by Maria Gianferrari and illustrated by Felicita Sala. Enjoy. And I love that it's dedicated for all trees. Be a tree. Stand tall. Stretch your branches to the sun. Let your roots curl, coil in the soil to ground you. Your spine is a trunk giving you shape, holding your crown, channeling your food. Your skin is bark, dead on the outside, protecting what's within. Beneath your bark are layers such as sapwood, carrying nutrients to help you grow bigger and taller, and heartwood, strong as bone, to support you. In your heart's center is your pith, keeper of nutrients when you were a sapling. High above, your crown may be round, weeping, pyramidal, broad. Let it spread, shine overhead, collecting sun, filtering dust, and shading your roots on hot days. Wave your leaves in the wind, breathe in air, drink in sun, let them fuel you and the world. See yourself, branches and leaves above, roots below, trunk in between. You are a tree. And now look around you. You are not alone. You are one of many trees. Our roots twine with fungi, joining all trees in the forest together. We talk, share food, store water, divide resources, alert each other to danger. A wood wide web of information. Ooh, shall we adopt that? We purify the air, we anchor the soil, preventing erosion. Our dome of joined crowns swings and straightens, slowing high winds. Our bodies and branches and roots are homes to birds and mammals and insects. We sustain ecosystems. Immigrant trees, away from their native habits, are vulnerable. But together, a forest of trees is strong. Mother trees nurse young trees, old trees shade new trees. Strong trees shelter weak trees. Healthy trees help sick trees. A family, a community, a country, a cosmos. There is enough for all. So be a tree, for together we are a forest. That is Be a Tree. And now, join me please in body or in spirit as we rise and sing our children on the way to their class.
We gather as a religious community to give each one of us a place where we can do the work of many. Together our light is much brighter than a solitary flame. Now is the time in our service when we share in the sacred act of giving, an expression of gratitude transformed into generosity that breathes life into our mission. As part of this mission that inspires us to act on our beliefs, we share our weekly offering with a local nonprofit agency providing services within our larger community. Our charitable giving recipient for the month of October is the Rejuvenation Community Daycare Center, which provides basic essentials and snack bags, a place where people can charge their phones, and connects people with available resources such as assistance filling out interview applications, signing up for EBT or SNAP benefits, and helping veterans connect with available benefits for them. In a moment, our ushers will move among us with baskets to collect the offering. Donations placed in the basket will go to the Rejuvenation Community Day Center. If you'd like your offering to be used for KUUF, please use one of the envelopes provided you with your order of service when you came into the sanctuary. For those joining us online, you may go to our website, kuuf.org, and select the Giving tab for PayPal and mailing information. If this is your first time at KUUF, please let the basket pass you by. Your presence is presence enough. Let there be an offering to strengthen and sustain our community, which is sacred to so many of us. Let us enjoy a gift of music from our very own choir, woo-hoo, as they sing Tapestry by Audrey Snyder, with original text by William Blake, and accompanied by our music coordinator, Brian Kenny, and flugelhornist, Mike Menifee. Now is the time for our joys and sorrows. When shared together, our joys are amplified and our sorrows lessened. I have several today. I'm starting with a combined joy and sorrow from my friend Margaret Wilder. The joy is that my daughter Melanie was still alive during our visit in Japan, where she lives with her husband and children. The sorrow is that she has cancer and will be passing from this dimension, and we'll all miss her dearly. Thank you, Margaret. I'm going to contrast that with what is coded as a big joy from Bonner Sams. Bonner switched his clean date from all drugs and alcohol from the old date of March 9th, 2003 to October 1st, 2004, that's today, when he was finally able to quit smoking cigarettes after a 2+ decade nicotine addiction. Now it's been 19 years and counting. Congratulations. That must be one of the toughest ones. My wife, Lisa, and I have a sorrow. The daughter and granddaughter of our friends and neighbors, named Elowen, died yesterday from leukemia at less than 2 years old. It's a life of struggle for the family. Ed Luby has a joy. His joy is remembering the joyful, extraordinary life of his great Aunt Sally, who passed away on Friday. I'm sorry, Ed. Thank you for classifying that as a joy. Brenda McCormick has a brand new joy. Well, it's from June 11th, when she got a new grandson. Callum Frederick Booth was born on June 11th this year. Congratulations. More joy in the world. And one final one, we may have noticed looking out the window, Alan Searle is celebrating his joy that snow has returned to the Olympic Mountains. You're not the only one. And we light one last candle for the joys and sorrows that are still too tender to share. Please join me now in a moment of prayer or intention. In the spirit of community, in which we find strength and common purpose, we share our joys, our sorrows, our hopes, and dreams. We have turned our minds and hearts toward one another in trust, giving love, seeking comfort, and celebrating together. We are part of the web of life that makes us one with all humanity, one with the universe. In all the moments of our lives, for those loved ones and events shared this morning, and for those we yet hold in the silence of our hearts, we are truly grateful for the love and support of this beloved community. May the spirit of life and love bring peace to us all. Amen and blessed be. Please remain seated as we sing Spirit of Life, hymn number 123 in the gray hymnal. The words will appear on your screen.
Good morning, good folks of KUUF. I'm Reverend Kari Kopnick. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an older Gen X white woman with very short hair and glasses, wearing a caramel-colored long sweater. Our reading this morning is by Adrienne Marie Brown, and it's entitled, My Intentions Are Good. My intentions are good, but the earth is on fire, and parts of me are running away from the smoke below. The way my skin looks burning, I am a collective dying, praying for rebirth. I say yes to each task, but the stovetop sea boils. Do you hear the whales singing panic as the ocean rages into new storm? The balance tilts into chaos. All the normalcy agitates me. My pretense is broken. I set reasonable goals as the news missiles toward me. Nonsensical, hyperbolic, overwhelming, forever Monday morning, amongst a people ignoring red flags, addicted to self-destruction with a smile and a handshake. I set out valiant. Today will be a good day. But the end of human history is strewn in the road, and I tremor existential again, feeling so small, so tired. Were we ever miraculous? And I get quiet. I listen for the labor of transition. Here you are. Here we are. We are not alone. We are the million doulas of awakening, spirit deep in the era of delusion. We remember that grief is love, that our calling is not production, but intervention, not performance, but deepest presence. And every birth is a ritual of precipice. So we bear down, and we wail, and once more we push. Now please join me in a moment of reflection, followed by our post-reflection music, We Shall Be Known, by Alan Menifee and Alina Hemingway.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these vibes. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the web. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these vibes. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now. It is the time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead
you so much, and thank you for the music. What a beautiful, beautiful service we've already had today. I feel like we could just go home. But I'm here today to tell you the story of us, Unitarian Universalism, as well as Unitarianism and Universalism. Just a little about the places we come from. We'll celebrate where we are today and talk a little bit about how we got here. So as the story starts, let's think about that picture that we saw in our story today, the picture of the tree roots that went down, down, and curled into the earth. They go down deep, curled around huge boulders, solid. And that's us. We are connected. Our branches go up, our roots go down, and that mycelium mushroom layer moves, holding us strong. I'm going to invite us to breathe a couple of big forest breaths. Together we are a forest. Okay, here's my story. I use the shorthand of being a lifelong UU, but that's not the whole story. I grew up attending a very secular small fellowship in a suburb of Minneapolis. When I was in grade school, I asked my mom if we shouldn't get saved like those people on TV. She marched us right down to the local funky little lay-led UU fellowship that was not too far from home. This was 1977, when no congregations lit a chalice in worship, and we never heard anything about the 6 guiding UU principles. We kids in that 70s Minnesota Valley UU fellowship grew up learning to be Unitarian Universalist in the very life of the congregation. We learned by having fundraising lunches for UUSC, the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, cooking and serving and cleaning and painting with members of all ages. I remember painting the men's bathroom with elders and learning so much, feeling grounded. Those conversations and connections across the age groups showed us how the adults in our fellowship were living out their values, living out their authentic beliefs. As we grew up, we took the class that was the predecessor to Our Whole Lives called About Your Sexuality, and we went to LRY, or Liberal Religious Youth Conferences. Anybody else? That was a time. But by the time I was in high school, LRY had been disbanded in scandal, and Young Religious Unitarian Universalists, or YRUU, sponsored the cons. In my early years in Sunday school, our classes met in the basement of the fellowship building. There was one of those cardboard room dividers that pulled across the checkerboard linoleum, dividing the 2 classes. For a couple of years, those classes centered on film strips from, I suppose there were lessons too, but film strips that were produced by the UUA's Beacon Press. They had intended to sell these curricula to secular organizations. So while we spent a year on Islam and a year on Hinduism, it included no Unitarian or Universalist or Unitarian Universalist history, and it had no sense of identity built in. In many ways, it was really okay, though, because I soaked in an identity as a UU by doing and by being and by helping. I haven't worked as a religious educator for a decade now, but when I was doing the yearly and monthly and weekly planning of what the children should learn and know, it was really important to me to ground the children's education in the lineage of Unitarian Universalism. I think this was because my experience of not knowing any of the history, frankly, until I taught it, I believe that it's important to ground in that history and to teach so that our children can learn, and that they come from a foundation of faith that they can then build on. In the late 2000s, the church I served used a curriculum called UU superheroes that used lessons about Pete Seeger and Albert Schweitzer and Malvina Reynolds and Christopher Reeves. In other classes, the kids learned about the 1568 Edict of Torda and Francis David's anti-Trinitarian theology. David is said to proclaim, "We need not believe alike to love alike," inspiring the king to adopt Unitarianism as the national faith. I wanted our kids to know that Unitarian Universalism wasn't a faith where you could believe whatever you want, but that we come from deeply held beliefs that were evolved and that changed and have grown and become what we are so proud of today. I wanted them to grow a healthy UU identity steeped in the knowledge that there are core beliefs that are grounded in this faith heritage. A little side story here, let's geek out. As I explored more UU history, I have come to understand that while it is true that we can find a history of both the ideas of Unitarian and Universalism in European and English history, the Unitarian Universalism that current UUism descends from was formed here on this side of the Atlantic. Here's what I understand. A group of people in the young United States rejected Calvinist ideas of predestination, of going to heaven or hell because it was chosen for you and unchangeable. This group believed in the idea of salvation by character, the idea of getting into heaven by doing good. This group was called Unitarians as a critique, an insult in the culture of the time. Unitarians in England had rejected the Trinity, believing only in God. The American Unitarians did believe in the saved and the damned, but for them, the path to salvation was available to those who followed the laws of nature, which were, it seemed, overseen by a God of reason, say, much like a president. Given that American Unitarians were formed in about 1815 and George Washington was elected in 1789, that makes a lot of sense. That's 26 years from Washington's election to the inception of Unitarians in America. So our Unitarian ancestors here were not so much rejecting the idea of people So our ancestors here in the States were not so much rejecting the Trinity as the Europeans and the English. Instead, they were rejecting the idea of Calvinism, of people being unchangeably damned to hell by a ruthless God. By 1865, they called themselves the National Conference of Unitarian and Other Christian Churches, and they pledged devotion to Jesus Christ. That's not anti-Trinitarian. About 40 years earlier, our Universalist ancestors were also reacting to Calvinism and the predetermined road to heaven and hell, and they were called Universalists by their critics, but their critics were right. And by 1780, Universalists had accepted the name and claimed the identity. The new Universalists did accept the idea that Calvinist idea of God as monarch. The critics were right, and they accepted the name and claimed the identity. But the new Universalists accepted that people are dependent on God for everything. It makes some sense that they formed like a monarchy. In 1780, there was no president. The Revolutionary War was still going on. So in the emerging Universalist belief system, God was a sort of benevolent monarch, and we were all princes and princesses that God was working to save. Predestination, but all go to heaven. The elevator speech is that Universalists believed that people were too good to be damned by God, or God was too good to damn people, and that Universalists believed that people were too good to be damned. And they were very much alike, and as the years passed, the similarities grew even stronger. They both continued to evolve and become revamping and recreating the faiths again and again as they learned more about living into the salvation of all and what that means. Now, for some of us, even those of us who were present for the consolidation of Unitarian and Universalism, those past faiths seem almost alien to who we are now. We can claim quite a fierce heritage in our ancestors. Our lineage is one of heartfelt spiritual expression and intellectual rigor. We can see from our very history that these are both dynamic and evolving faiths, and the long journey from Unitarian and Universalism to UU and the continuing evolving and transformation in the next 60 years after consolidation is absolute proof that we are, by our very existence, as it says on the cover of the gray hymnal, a living tradition. One more geek out moment. There's current work to reimagine the 7 principles that are at the front of that gray hymnal. This is supposed to be done every 15 years, but you know, committees and everything, and here we are at almost 40 years later. From 1961, at the consolidation of Unitarian Universalists, UU women were blatantly unhappy with the blatantly sexist language of the original principles. And as they worked to change that language, many UUs couldn't accept that they personally or their association was patriarchal. The UU Women's Federation president, Natalie Gulbranson, had to explain repeatedly why references to mankind in those principles left women out. Detractors said, "Mankind doesn't leave you out." And she replied, "We are human beings, but not men. There are many other terms you could use, say humankind, human beings, that include women." In 1981, a revision of the principles and purposes drafted by various women's groups was completed, and it caused great uneasiness across the entire faith. Finally, in 1985, just a couple of weeks after I graduated from high school, the bylaws were amended and the 7 principles adopted, and they were pretty much the principles that you see in the front of that gray hymnal today. That's why we need to work to change them. It's time. Like the struggle of UU women to change that first set of principles, this faith has often fallen short of what it strives to be. UUs haven't been uniformly on the side of fighting for justice for Black Americans. There was very much a both sides element to UU thought and action around abolition. Millard Fillmore in the 1850s Millard Fillmore was president in the 1850s and a Unitarian. He personally opposed slavery, but signed the Fugitive Slave Law. Unitarian John Calhoun, vice president under both John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson, defended slavery for economic reasons. And during the Civil Rights era, as the Supreme Court ruled that schools must be integrated in Brown v. Board, some UU churches moved to block integration of their congregations. Also, you may have heard of the Black empowerment tragedy in 1967, when significant funding was promised to a group of Black UU leaders, the Black Affairs Council, and then that promise was broken and the money was not given. UU structures didn't actively work for including LGBTQ clergy until quite recently. For many years, ministerial fellowship was withheld from LGBTQ UUs. In 1969, Reverend James Stoll was the first UU minister to come out as gay. He never served a congregation again. In the times before that, and likely after too, ministers known to be gay were fired. In 1979, the first out gay men in UU ministry were finally called to serve congregations. And in 1984, the first out lesbian, Barbara Peskin, was called to serve. The first openly trans ministers were ordained in the late 1980s, and it wasn't until 2002 that the first openly trans minister was called to a UU pulpit. Trans and non-binary clergy are still not equally called to serve congregations. There's more. With the news about the deadly treatment of children in Native American boarding schools, it's important to look at the UU connection to boarding schools. I want to read from the text of the website of Justice UU, the Washington UU State Action Network. It reads, "There were 3 attempts on the part of Unitarians to undertake educational work amongst the Indians. One mission was among the Chippewa Ojibwe in Minnesota in 1855 that failed due to funding. In 1871, President Grant assigned the Unitarians the responsibility of education of the Utes on the reservation near White River, Colorado. This attempt failed as well due to not getting sufficient encouragement. In 1866, the American Unitarian Association established a boarding school on the Crow Reservation in Montana called the Montana Industrial School for Indians, or Bond's Mission School, run by Unitarian Reverend and Mrs. Henry F. Bond. There are more stories and more things to learn from. Heritage is important, and the truth is important. Turning away doesn't help us live into a better tomorrow. I was raised to believe that, frankly, UUs were better, that we didn't have the misdeeds done by other faith groups. And of course, that's not true. I remember sitting in the opening service of the 2009 General Assembly, hearing the story of Unitarians sent to manage posts on the Ute Reservation. We were in Salt Lake City, Utah. UUA President William Sinkford offered a formal apology to the Utes on behalf of the association for crimes against their people. He said, "We participated in a process that stole your land and forced a foreign way of life on you." Sitting there in that auditorium, I was absolutely shocked. I had no idea. I was in my 40s, a UU for most of my life, and I had no idea. And also at that 2009 Salt Lake City GA, the Standing on the Side of Love campaign was launched. This was a wide collection of justice work on many fronts. I don't know if any of you were there, but I remember the huge yellow golden banner that hung from the convention center and actually shattered a glass panel during a thunderstorm. They cut it up and gave it to us. I think my son still has a piece. They handed out those famous yellow shirts to dozens of faith leaders to wear to gain recognition of this social movement. And those shirts have become iconic. When I showed up to the 2017's Women's March, I came alone, but I knew to look for my people by looking for the yellow shirts, and I marched with a fabulous group of UUs. Those yellow shirts have become a mainstay of every march for justice since. And in a move honoring disability justice, the campaign is now called Side with Love, a testament to learning and growing and changing as we understand more. Side with Love is still a leader across causes because, for all the mistakes and misses in UU history, there are a lot of really, really amazing things that have been accomplished. Let me share a few more. As the women of Unitarian Universalism were gathering to work for the change of the old principles and that sexist language, they were growing from a lineage of women's rights action. The first woman formally ordained was the Universalist Olympia Brown in 1863. She also fought for women to be able to legally vote beside Unitarians Susan B. Anthony and Lucy Stone. Reverend Brown was one of the few original suffragists to live long enough to vote in the 1920 presidential election, the first in which women could legally vote. UUs have a history of working for reproductive rights, currently taking action to support the moral obligation for people to have the right to safe and legal abortions. Pre-Roe v. Wade, UU leaders were in the Clergy Consultation Service on Abortion, an organized network assuring safe abortions for women who did not have access. I remember as a young religious educator hearing a story about someone I think it was in Texas, cleaning out an old church storage cabinet and coming across the instructions about how to get women to safe abortion providers, often UUs themselves. Unitarians have done good work on the journey toward LGBTQIA+ justice. After decades of effort from UU leaders, the Welcoming Congregation program was instituted in 1989, and congregations began the education, reflection, and action work necessary to fully affirm and include lesbian, gay, and bisexual people, and to advocate for greater equality in the community. Unitarian Universalists became strong supporters of marriage equality. The first legal same-gender wedding in the country was performed at the UUA Chapel in 2004 by then President William Sinkford. Also in 2004, Reverend Mr. Barb Grieve and Reverend Sean Parker Dennison founded TRUST, Transgender Religious Professional Unitarian Universalist Together. Transgender Religious Professional Unitarian Universalists Together. TRUST was founded to support and advocate for trans UU professionals, religious professionals, and has provided trainings in transgender identity and worked with the UUA to improve support for trans and non-binary folks. UUs have done some good work toward creating an anti-racist society. In the US, when Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. made a call for people of faith to come to Selma to march for civil rights, busloads of UU ministers and lay people responded. In 2017, in response to the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, UU leaders stood arm in arm, marching against white supremacists who were rallying. I remember seeing a picture of UUA President Susan Frederick Gray wearing shoes that were meant more for preaching than for running. I told her later that year how deeply I appreciated that she was ready to hold her ground and not run. And the church of the larger fellowship has a broad prison ministry to and with people who are imprisoned. You can become a pen pal with an incarcerated person today through the CLF. So much good. So many good acts. So much. For every congregation and every free-range UU out there are ways that the ripples of daily justice work move out into the world, building the beloved community. UUs can claim a fierce heritage in our ancestors. Our lineage is one of heartfelt social justice. And it's also important to know the history, the whole story, so that the living tradition continues to grow and become, to build the world we dream of. So, what comes next? Where will Unitarian Universalism go in the next 5 years and in the coming decades? Where do we come from? Where are we going? And what are we as a faith called to do? What are you called to do? And how, together, as that forest, can we make it so? Many blessings as you bring your love to the broken places in our world. And now, let's take a moment of solace as we rise in body or spirit and sing our closing hymn, number 1002, Comfort Me, in singing the Journey hymnal. The words will also appear on your monitors. Thank you so much. After the service today is over, please exit the foyer. Coffee and tea will be served in the breezeway between the two buildings. And you're welcome to bring your beverage back and snacks back into the building if you wish. I have one more quick announcement. A reminder that the new KUUF conversation will take place in the Elmore room after this service. I want to remind us all that joy and sorrow are woven fine. Joy and sorrows are woven fine. Thank you for your heartfelt listening today. Our chalice extinguishing words today are by Tet Gallardo, who is a Philippine UU. Truth manifests itself with its own force. Let us ride on the power of its revelation with a heart ready to receive, to forgive, and to learn. Go in peace, friends.